Hello, thanks for joining us today in our sleep class. Today we're going to unlock the secrets to a better sleep. So let me share my screen. Right. So I'm Hillary Howell, pharmacist, owner of Apothecary Company, and we will get into this. Okay, so I think to further understand all the things that involve sleep, we need to understand what sleep does. So, sleep is a normal process that allows our body and brain to rest. So, we need to sleep for that reason. It is a way for energy conservation and storage. So, when we're asleep, our body uses less energy, and that lets us restock for the next day. It's involved in self-repair and recovery. So being less active makes it easier for our body to heal and repair issues that had happened earlier in the day when we were awake. That's also why being sick makes us feel more tired and the need to rest because the energy is used up. And then it's great for brain maintenance. While we're asleep, our brain recognizes and catalogs memories and learned information. So sleep is necessary for many things. Sleep is also related to many different disease states. So, less sleep is linked to 7 out of 15 leading causes of death. Less than 6 hours of sleep increases mortality risk by 13%. An age adjusted percentage risk increase. So, it's associated with stroke, asthma, heart attack, chronic kidney disease, cancer, depression, COPD, coronary heart disease, diabetes, and arthritis. So, we need our sleep. How much sleep do I need? So that depends on the age and the group that you're in. So newborns, anyone born up to 3 months, you need between 14 to 17 hours of sleep, and this is including naps. Infants, we're looking between 12 and 16 hours of sleep, including nap time. Young children, ages 1 through 5, 10 to 14 hours, including nap time. And as we get older, it becomes less and less. School age children, ages 6 to 12, we need 9 to 12 hours of sleep. Teens, 8 to 10, and 18 years and older, we need at least 7 to 9. Of course, the brain is involved in the sleep functions, but all the different parts of the brain have its own direct individual function. So, for instance, the thalamus helps us become quiet, letting us tune out the external world. The forebrain promotes sleep and wakefulness. The hypothalamus is helpful at producing GABA to help us relax. The midbrain gets us into that REM sleep that we'll talk about in a little bit. The pineal gland helps us with melatonin. So the brain plays a huge part in our overall sleep and how we process our sleep and how we get through our sleep. There's 4 stages of sleep. Depending on the literature, there may be 5. It just depends on how they are framing this. But for this particular instance, we're going to say there's 4 stages of sleep. The first stage is that transition period between wakefulness and sleep. And that's when sometimes we like jolt, you right? Falling asleep. It lasts around 5 to 10 minutes. If we successfully get through that stage, then we're looking into stage 2. And that's where we spend half our time is in stage 2. And our body temperature begins to drop, our heart rate begins to slow, the brain begins to produce what we call sleep spindles, and these last approximately 20 minutes at a time. Then we'll get into what's called stage 3. Our muscles will relax, our blood pressure and breathing rate drop even more. Our deepest sleep occurs here, and this is the restorative sleep. So we love stage 3. And then we can move on to stage 4, and that's REM sleep, right? The brain becomes actually more active. Our body becomes more relaxed and immobilized. This is where dreams happen. This is where our eyes move rapidly. So these are the stages of sleep. And when we go through the whole nighttime process, we see the sleep cycles through the night. So here we are again. That yellow bar is the lightest sleep, and that's when we first fall asleep. Then we'll transition into the light sleep again, that N2 where it's the green bars, and we're in and out of that quite often, and it kind of stays pretty steady throughout the night. Our deep sleep happens the most, or yeah, the most when we initially fall asleep, but over the course of the night, those deep sleeps get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then same with REM. REM will actually be shorter to begin with, but then it will get longer as the night progresses. So these are the typical sleep cycles through the night. But then if we look into how our hormones are made and this awakening and going to sleep response, we're looking at cortisol and melatonin and its relationship. So typically, perfect case scenario is the hour before your eyes wake and open, our cortisol will start to rise to prepare us for that day, and it will give us a boost and just get us going. And that's what we see here. But around noontime, cortisol will start to fall and will slowly decline, putting our body to rest until we go to sleep. But opposite effect, when we wake up, our melatonin is going to be the lowest that our body signals, which makes sense, right? But as the night goes on, melatonin will increase to put us to sleep. So there's this what we call cortisol and melatonin relationship, and we'll talk about that later on and how we can play with those to get us to sleep. I think what we need to figure out though is what's insomnia mean? Because everyone can say that, they have insomnia. But our clinical definition is difficulty falling or staying asleep for at least 3 nights a week. It has to be considered chronic long term, but it's got to happen 3 or more nights a week and last for 3 months or longer. And then it involves, after that, medication and testing. This is like the clinical conventional side of things. So we've talked about all that up to this point. Now we need to figure out, well, what mainstream medicine may be missing? What isn't addressed conventionally? And that leads us to that functional medicine approach. So common sleep problems when people come in and we talk about sleep, we're hearing, I have trouble falling asleep. I have trouble waking up during the night. And I'm also having trouble waking up too early. So depending on what that looks like for you, we have different solutions and what your body may be presenting with. So plausible causes that we're going to talk about, well, are you having blood sugar imbalances? Is it a hormone imbalance? Are you having a lot of stress that's causing these imbalances for that cortisol level we talked about? That's that HPA axis dysfunction. Is your thyroid a bit wonky? And we need to look at that. What about your lifestyle factors, which we'll talk about? And then, of course, my favorite, nutritional deficiencies. So when we look at blood sugar imbalances, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. What came first? Because when we go into this, we can, and I know, and I apologize for this complicated slide, but if we have insulin resistance, meaning that your sugar is not well controlled overall, that in itself can lead to sleep, short sleep duration, right? Or even the circadian misalignment. So this cortisol, melatonin thing's not working. And if you do have sleep disturbances, then sleep disturbances can cause blood sugar imbalances too. So again, it's a cycle and we got to figure out where do we cut that. When we have um when we have diet, when we look at diet throughout the day, we are looking at morning, afternoon, and evening. So there's times of low glucose, there's times of optimization, and there's times of high glucose. We have to be very mindful that when we eat something sugary, that our sugar is going to spike and it's going to drop really, really fast. We don't want that. So that looks like it's like a Snickers bar. It jumps and then it crashes. But if we have something, let's just say, well balanced, some maybe even carbohydrates, some carbs, potatoes, and some protein, meat, we're going to look at optimal. It's going to be a slow rise, steady, and it's going to stay even keel. That's what we want. But let's say a lot of people like that just before bedtime snack. Well, if we eat something too sugary and we don't have enough protein or fiber to carry you through the night, we're going to see that spike and we're going to see that crash in the middle of the night. So your body, when you're sleeping, is like high alert, right? When you have low sugar, you're going to throw yourself into high cortisol. Cortisol is going to throw you into high epinephrine, high adrenaline, and it's going to get you awake. So we got to think about, well, is your blood sugar imbalances in in check? If it's not, then we have to talk about how you're eating throughout the day. There's hemoglobin A1C that we can check. There is insulin we can check. So that's this and the insulin I just mentioned. Hemoglobin A1C, we might as well just go into that. Optimally, I want it to be 5.4. That's your average blood sugar over 3 months. We're we don't want it to creep up past 5.7, then we're considered pre-diabetic. So food plays a huge role in that. Besides food, we need to figure out how much your body can actually process that sugar behind the scenes, and that's insulin. Insulin, they don't check, conventional medicine doesn't check that, but we're shooting that for that to be between 6 to 8. There's a lot that goes into that, and that's all I'll leave with insulin. So again, snacks with protein and fiber prior to bed. We just have to do it the right way so our sugar doesn't spike. And then sometimes when insulin's too elevated or we have uncontrolled sugar, berberine, a supplement called berberine could be beneficial. Hormones. Hormones are a big topic as well. Moving into estrogen. Estrogen affects sleep more than we know. So, estrogen can affect sleep quality. Higher levels will lead to better sleep. Estrogen replacement can also help postmenopausal women kind of quiet those hot flashes. It will help with sleep latency. So, it can reduce, and estrogen will reduce the time it takes to fall asleep. Sleep quality, estrogen can improve sleep quality, especially those with insomnia. It can reduce the number of times a person wakes up during the night, as far as arousals go, and then it can help mediate body temperature. So estrogen is quite beneficial. And when we fall into this perimenopause and menopausal state, this is when things start going awry. So we look at estrogen. The other thing is progesterone. And as we talk about in the near future, we'll talk about it's not necessarily about the estrogen or the progesterone itself individually, it's about how they play in the balance between the two. So progesterone helps with the sleep. The my most favorite thing about progesterone is that it helps promote GABA production. That's our natural progesterone produced in our body. Now, if we supplement with that with a prescription, we are going to look into two different variations. Number one, with a cream, number two, with a capsule. And it's how your liver processes it. So let's just say you do progesterone supplement in a bioidentical cream. You're not going to get that GABA production because it doesn't go through your liver. If you do progesterone capsules, it helps you fall asleep at night because it's going to be processed through your liver when you take it orally and it's going to produce GABA production. So progesterone capsules, should you ever need that, being perimenopausal or menopausal, will help promote sleep that way. It will help us feel more relaxed and improve our mood. Progesterone also reduces anxiety. It is a natural anti-anxiety, so it helps us fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. It will increase the sleep time. It will also increase the amount of time you sleep and the amount of time you stay in REM. It will promote normal sleep patterns, and it will help us fall asleep faster and experience fewer disruptions in sleep. So progesterone is huge. We also have to think about at different times of our life, right? We've got different times where we are going to be a cycling woman, we are going to be perimenopausal, we're going to be menopausal. And each time we go through these little life seasons, the progesterone has a different effect. So, for instance, here, progesterone will change in our sleep behavior because it's helping with restless legs, it's helping with sleep duration, it's helping with sleep quality. So there's a huge benefit between all these things, and hormones play a big role. We also have to talk about testosterone. We've talked about estrogen and progesterone. We have to talk about testosterone. So testosterone can affect sleep in both directions. High levels of testosterone can affect sleep. Low levels can do the same thing. High dose testosterone can reduce total sleep time. It can increase hypoxemia and then disrupt breathing during sleep. So you almost get this sleep apnea. Lack of sleep can decrease testosterone production. So here we have that cycle again, right? No testosterone can lead to lack of sleep. Lack of sleep can lead to no testosterone. So this is where the functional medicine, that root cause, really comes into play. And then sleep deprivation and cortisol. We have to talk about cortisol levels, which we'll do in a short bit, but cortisol levels increase as testosterone levels decrease. So that's that fight or flight again, which again, we'll talk about in a second. So testosterone is very tricky and has to be mindfully paid attention to. So how can we address this? We want to test blood versus saliva versus urine. So just to throw this out here, I know this is about sleep, but we're going to go into hormones just for a tad second. When we check hormones in the blood, most of the time our levels will come up spot on. Specifically in estrogen and progesterone, we're looking for the balance between the two, right? So in blood, we can kind of get generalities, but in 9 times out of 10, most people who have sleep disturbance issues will look normal in the blood. Because of that, we usually turn to saliva and urine. So saliva and urine will look at total blood, and we'll also look at what's stored in your body and your tissues. So you kind of get a better sense of what's actually going on. In this example here is by the Dutch test that we do, and we'll get an idea of all the hormones of what your body's storing. I will add the caveat that testosterone is more accurate in the blood. So I will back up and say that. So testosterone, when we look at that, we're looking at what's called total testosterone, free testosterone, bound testosterone, sex binding hormone globulin. So we need to get the bigger picture of testosterone. Okay, slipping into HPA axis dysfunction. So that's a fancy word for just overall stress response, right? I mentioned the normal cortisol pattern earlier when we were talking about melatonin, but again, just a reminder that cortisol will start to rise an hour before you open your eyes. So it's preparing your body for that wake up response. Within 2 hours, your cortisol will peak, and then it will start falling slowly and then preparing your body for rest, right? So we're looking for cortisol spikes when we think about anything to do with insomnia. So likely contributed to cortisol spikes. Well, shoot, if you have excess stress, anxiety will push your cortisol higher. Caffeine will push your cortisol higher by nature. Sugar dips, as we just explained, will push your cortisol higher, and just overall long-term stress. So this test here is the saliva test, a ZRT lab test. And what we do to get an idea is we get a 24-hour output. So typically, if you ask your doctor that I want to check my cortisol, they'll only know how to check it via blood from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. That is only one data point in a set of many throughout the 24-hour period. So it doesn't give us a good idea of what your body's doing, because it could be completely normal then and be totally disarrayed the next 24 hours. So here we're looking at a 4-point cortisol level. So here, when the person woke up at 7 o'clock, they had a little bit higher cortisol, and then it kind of carried out through the day. But if we look at their bedtime data point when they went to bed, we can see that it is sky high here. It should be in this like little green line area. So I would expect that this person has a hard time shutting their brain off and just going to sleep. So we get an idea if it's cortisol related through these types of tests. Here's that Dutch test, same thing. This person actually is waking up with high cortisol. So we mentioned about someone able someone that's not able to go to bed and shut their brain off and just shut her down, that's this type of person. But there's some people that can go to bed and wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and not go back to bed, and they're up for, the rest of the day essentially. So these are the types of tests here where we would catch that, oh my goodness, look at here. I would expect this person's cortisol to be right in between these little lines of that awakening, or maybe around 20 if we were going to measure it here, but they're waking up very, very peaked. So the question is, well, did they peak just when they woke up and it was just an excitatory response? Or did this sucker start peaking at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and it just started climbing from there? So that would explain that. So we kind of get an idea of, well, is it cortisol related or not? And if this is playing a role, there's ways to address that. So again, testing is appropriate. I never speculate. I always test cortisol. When we find abnormalities in the cortisol, we rely on our herbs, or a group of herbs called adaptogenic herbs. So that's ashwagandha, rhodiola, shashandra berry. There are many, and what they do is they act synergistically together. So what they take the stress and the burden off your adrenal glands so they can relax and not overproduce too much test or too much cortisol, but it will also repair what has happened, months to years prior. We also can use stress reduction techniques, meditation's good, those types of things. Journaling would be good. In times where cortisol is too high, adaptogenic herbs will always support. But when cortisol is very high, we're relying on a supplement called theanine. Theanine will bring cortisol down. So theanine is very useful. We're looking anywhere from probably 50 all the way up to 200 milligrams an hour before you need it. When we're talking about here in sleep, we usually take in an hour before bed, and that will usually prevent cortisol jumps in the middle of the night, or just send you into a deeper sleep and lower the cortisol naturally. Thyroid dysfunction is another thing that we think about. It isn't that the thyroid's causing the inability to sleep, it's the thyroid symptoms that are causing the inability to sleep. So if you're hyperthyroid and your TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is lower, I'd say anywhere probably lower than 0.4, you may have hyperthyroidism. So we'll see frequent waking periods that stem from feeling nervous. Maybe you're irritable. Maybe it's an increased need to urinate. It can also cause some night sweats. It can increase feelings of depression and anxiety, which also hinder a good night's rest. So it's the symptoms caused by the hyperthyroidism. If we go one step further and we look at hypothyroidism, that's high TSH. That's probably, I want it to be between 1 and 2, but anything hypo clinically, conventionally, is anything over 4.5. But in that case, you may have an intolerance to cold temperatures and muscle and joint pain. Maybe you have hypersomnia, which is excessive daytime sleepiness. So maybe you're sleeping all throughout the day because you can't stay awake, but because of that, you can't sleep at night. There is research from the Frontiers in Endocrinology that shows that while underactive thyroid may not directly cause insomnia, the symptoms that come with it can certainly affect the quality of sleep. So we just talked about that. How can we address that? I think the take-home message here is very important. It is check all the levels, right? So a doctor should not just check what we call TSH with reflux to free T4. What that means is that if it falls out of that general range of 0.4 all the way to 4.5, then that signals the lab to pull what's called a free T4. We want to know that regardless of anything. So we want to know TSH should be between 1 and 2. We want to know free T4, that should be 1. And then we want to know free T3. So back up 2 seconds. TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. It will signal your thyroid to release what's called free T4. From free T4, your body will convert to what's called free T3. free T3 is what our body uses for all thyroid symptoms. That's thermoregulation. That is, if you're tired and fatigued or not, that's hair growth. That's all thyroid symptoms. So our free T3 should be between 3.3 to 3.5 optimally. So if we can't get to that point, we got to figure out why. So often we'll look at, well, nutrition. What's your nutrition? Do you have food sensitivities? Is gluten dampening your thyroid conversion? Are you deficient in zinc, selenium, iron, specifically ferritin levels? Are you a smoker? Do you drink much alcohol? Are you on certain medications that change thyroid production? What about your blood sugar? That plays a big part. But the big thing is typically what I see the most is stress. So stress and cortisol levels will affect thyroid most often. So it's looking at the big picture of thyroid because again, you could look completely normal in conventional standards and still feel symptomatic. So just advocate for that whole big panel. So when we're going through all those processes that I just talked about and we're falling into this, the last thing I usually check, I always consider through nutrient depletions, which I'll explain in a minute, but neurotransmitter testing. So this is a urine-based test, but we'll look at what we call glutamate and histamine and dopamine and GABA and serotonin, and we'll look and see if you're overexcitatory, if you're underexcitatory, and what that looks like. But how do we address? It's testing, and we don't usually use that. I mean, I've used it in three of my clients, and it's given us good direction. But this is the last resort because we can usually figure it out before we get to this point. Again, lifestyle, of course, we need to do lifestyle regardless of everything that we just talked about. But making sure your bedroom is dark as possible. We want to invest in blinds and curtains that block out that morning light. We want to remove any gadgets that have a light screen. It stimulates our brain in the wake up mode. Avoid blue light from televisions, computer monitors, cell phones. We want to turn screens off at least 1 hour before bedtime. Again, reduce caffeine intake. It can stay up into your system 6 hours later. Same with the nicotine. I know I have to stop drinking my coffee before 2 o'clock. Otherwise, I'll be up for the night. So caffeine plays a role. Meals, believe it or not, does as well. So space your last big meal or drink 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. So a lot of times in my case, if I can't fall asleep, it's because I have a heavy stomach. It's just I haven't digested my food. And to be honest, what puts me to bed is if I take a digestive enzyme or bitters to kind of help digest that meal, and then I will fall asleep. So a meal, it plays a big role. Avoid exercising in the evening, restrict to stretching, yoga, or after dinner walk, because that is a cortisol spike, right? When you exercise, you will jump cortisol that will then jump epinephrine and norepinephrine. So stretching, yoga, that's always good, those somatic exercises. And then maintain a regular sleep time and bedtime routine. You can use nightly rituals, warm bath, maybe lavender essential oils, something like that. So the way our body processes, and this is how this whole melatonin production starts, is at 6 o'clock, it's light out, 6 p.m., right? But by 8 o'clock, it starts getting dim. This is more towards winter months, but 8 o'clock, it starts getting dim. Your body will process that reduction of light as a signaling response to produce melatonin. So it has to, it's all about perception. It's all about the brain perceiving that you're doing these things, or it's perceiving that light is getting dimmer around you. So this is 8 o'clock, and by 10 o'clock, you're sleeping. So building better sleep habits, we just talked about the lifestyle changes. Sometimes we have to kind of do our homework and figure out why these things are occurring by keeping a sleep journal. There's a sample available that we have here, so please feel free and ask about that. Fitness device, smartphone apps can kind of help you keep a sleep journal as well. But what they're looking for is really marking bedtime, wake up time. How long does it take you to fall asleep? The number and duration of sleep interruptions. Are you taking any daytime naps? What's your perceived quality of sleep? Your smartwatch could be telling you sleep awesome, but you don't feel it. So we kind of got have to connect those things. Consumption of alcohol, caffeine, or tobacco. Are you using any daily medications? What's your daily exercise routine? So all these play a role in how you may be sleeping at night. Building a better bedroom often plays a role. Temperature set between 60 and 70. I know if I get too cold, I can't sleep. It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. If I get too hot, I can't sleep. So my temperature that I like is actually around 65. So temperature plays a role. Noise kept to a minimum. Lights off. Use blackout curtains or a sleep mask. Clean sheets, covers that are comfortable. Sometimes when I can't sleep in the middle of the night and my covers feel gross, and they're not really gross, but they feel gross to me, I'll change them and then I'll go back to sleep. Making the bed before you get in, that plays a role. And then pleasant aroma such as lavender. I'm a big person that needs white noise actually. Some other people need a TV on. So I'm not saying the white noise in the TV is a good thing, but again, I'm not going to give that up. I have a horrible night's sleep when I don't have my white noise. So it is what it is, but we just have to be mindful of what gets us to sleep. Nutrition and vitamins. Play a huge role. And if you come into the store and you're saying, I can't sleep, I'm going to start here first because we have to build a foundation that your body can work with in the way that it knows to do the best it can. And that's to put you to sleep. So your body needs magnesium. We need 300 to 400 milligrams recommended daily allowance a day. And we're not getting it in our diet. So magnesium at bedtime will help support the GABA receptors, right? It's that relaxation effect, and calming the mind. It will increase magnesium, will help those with restless leg syndrome. So maybe it's going to help a symptom that will help you sleep. So magnesium is our starting point. When I go into magnesium, you can go to the stores and find magnesium oxide. Remember, only 6% of that's absorbed. So you're not going to get a therapeutic effect to help you sleep with magnesium oxide 300 milligrams. We recommend magnesium glycinate. That's for people of any age, for any effect. If I go into someone who is constipated, then I'm going to recommend magnesium citrate. Again, 300 to 400 milligrams at bedtime. There's several other different magnesiums. I won't cover them today, but please don't take magnesium oxide. Vitamin D3 also plays a role. It may help improve sleep quality, reduce the time it takes to fall asleep, and support longer sleep duration. So these recommendations of dosing, keep in mind, please, it's for the adult population. But vitamin D, what we're finding, especially after COVID, is that we need an average of 5,000 units a day to maintain our levels where it needs to be. And that should be around 50. So I suggest checking vitamin D levels once a year. It's helpful if they're around 50, and to maintain levels of 50, we need 5,000 units a day. I do not rely on the sun. There's been studies showing that Miami and us in the northern hemisphere have been just as deficient as one another. So sun plays a role, but it involves how you process it in the liver. So I'd rather just go to vitamin D3, 5,000, and get it that way. The other thing is vitamin B6. So we do not get enough B vitamins, in my opinion, especially with the disease states and the symptoms that we have going on in the world nowadays. But besides the overall B complex, focusing on B6, because B6 is linked to the production of serotonin and melatonin. So a lot of people who do have a vitamin B6 deficiency will not dream, and they will not have good melatonin production. So vitamin B6, um, counterintuitively, we're going to activate you and give you energy in the morning, but it's going to help you sleep at night. And the last thing is iron and ferritin. We don't really talk about that a lot. It's not directly related to sleep, but keep in mind low iron, low ferritin, which are your iron stores, will play a huge role in restless legs and plantar fasciitis. So if your legs are just jumping at night, a lot of times it's due to magnesium deficiencies, it's vitamin D deficiencies, and iron deficiency. So we got to pay a particular attention to that. Real quick, melatonin. This is kind of, I was talking about that. I'm not a big person on jumping on melatonin. I find that it gives you a deeper sleep. It doesn't really help me go to sleep. It gives me a deeper sleep, but know that the production declines with age. We used to say that if you supplement with melatonin, your body's not going to make that. There's current research showing that that's not the case any longer. So keep that in mind. And then the production of melatonin is dependent on many cofactors. We're looking at what we call SAMe. We got to have enough B vitamins, magnesium, niacin, iron, folate, zinc, vitamin C. All these play a huge role at that melatonin production. So again, melatonin is not my first line to jump on, but often it is beneficial. Keep in mind, melatonin is a hormone, so I do not recommend that in children. There's a lot of other things we can do and address before we hit to the melatonin. Cannabis, worth mentioning, there's CBD, THC, there's CBN. CBN is kind of really shining when it comes down to sleep. It is a quote unquote band-aid. It's a useful thing. It's not going to help your body with its sleep cycle, but if you can't sleep and you need to shut her down to restore, cannabis is a good option. So it is shown to improve sleep quality. It gets you to sleep faster, and then it also keeps you asleep. So it's worth trying if that resonates with you. The other thing, there's different herbs and plants. You're going to see different concoctions of capsules out there that might help you sleep. In there, you might see herbs, valerian, passion flower, lemon balm, lavender, California poppy, chamomile, skullcap. They're all beneficial at keeping you and getting you asleep. This is a example of that, where there's GABA for relaxation. You'll notice theanine, a hefty amount of theanine, mind you, to kind of shut that cortisol down. Ashwagandha, valerian, passion flower. So those will probably knock you out pretty good. I don't know that you'll need 4 capsules, but this is an option too. I do want to mention skullcap. Skullcap is a wonderful herb. Skullcap is used a lot in ADHD, ADD population. What it does, it centralizes thoughts and it shuts those thoughts down. So you can kind of just fall asleep, right? Rather than having this mind wander. There are options such as homeopathy, like cures like, right? So there's different blends out there. People do find this helpful. I do love homeopathy because it does not interact with any medications. It's safe to give to kids. It's nothing you can be dependent on. You can't overdose. So homeopathy is a wonderful option to try. Focusing on children, though, we need to look at first question is why? Why can't the kids sleep? Is it because of nutrient deficiencies? Is their mind wandering? Are they scared? So we've just got to figure out why. And a lot of times, magnesium is wonderful. We're all deficient in magnesium. We know we're not getting it enough. So magnesium is enough just to kind of get the kids to sleep and settle down. Course, it's dose dependent, so I always reach out to ask what the appropriate dose is. But magnesium is my first go-to. Maybe they can't sleep because they're scared. Maybe it'd be fun just to make what we call monster spray, where they can spray it under the bed, spray it in the closet, spray it around the room. It's a fun thing to do. You can put essential oils in there like lavender, and it will kind of maybe cause a calming effect. So there's monster sprays out there. I did mention skullcap tincture and glycerite. Sometimes I think the kids, they're just laying there and they can't shut their brain off. Skullcap is wonderful option. I say glycerate in this because a tincture is alcohol based. I'll leave that up to you if you want to do the tincture for your child or not, but glycerate is also a version and that's in glycerin and it tastes kind of sugary, so pretty good. And the other thing is homeopathy, as I mentioned. So this is kind of like my beginners for children. After that, then you can kind of dive into what we just discussed for the adults. But typically, this is corrected when we look at this. So where do you start again? We just covered a lot of information. Systematically, I start with nutritional deficiencies, right? Because if one thing's off, such as your B6, and you're not making enough melatonin, you're likely not making enough serotonin, you're likely not detoxifying your hormones. So you're going to hit so many different factors by just addressing nutritional deficiencies. As I had mentioned, we need to look at if it's a situational thing. Is this a cortisol thing? Is this something that I need to address just to balance my stress? Can I remove myself from the situational situation, right? So that it can be looked at. The other thing is lifestyles. We mentioned, doing a sleep chart, doing a sleep routine. Um, those types of things. Lifestyle is always important and should be considered first and foremost, along with nutritional deficiencies. And then once you've got that on lock and you feel like you can move on, then you start evaluating hormones, cortisol, looking at blood work, because again, you've got to have that foundation built so you can just gain traction in other areas. If you jump to hormones, if you jump to cortisol, I think you would miss just an easy overall um, starting point. So as a recap, from what we can offer here at the store is magnesium. I mentioned magnesium glycinate citrate if constipated, starting at 300 milligrams at bedtime. You can try melatonin 3 milligrams at bedtime if you'd like. Maybe adrenocalm. We've got a product called adrenocalm, and you can't shut off your brain. You're stressed and your cortisol's high. The option is to take one or two of those at bedtime. Maybe you don't want to take adaptogenic herbs and you just need the theanine to shut yourself down in those cortisol spikes at night. There's something called Gabatrex. Maybe if you wake up in the middle of the night and you cannot go to bed, you could take a theanine. So those are all options. It depends on each individual situation, but if I had to throw a blanket thing out there, please just start with magnesium. It can make a world of difference. And as a special offer, um, if this is something that interests you, we do have our online store at apothecariandcompany.com. Top right hand corner, there's a shop button, and you do get 10% off any of these if you do want to try those. Just use the code SLEEP10 at your checkout. So I hope I addressed a lot of questions you may have. I thank you for attending today, and I appreciate it. Thanks.